And to give us that information, we're joined by our good friend of the show, writer for On 3 Sports, cover LSU, Bryce Koon. Bryce, welcome to the show. You like our new digs? You like our new spot?
Yeah. What am I looking at here?
I
missed
Southern,
the intro.
We're at Southern Regional Medical Center. It's our new home. So the place that we were, Indigo, and I want to give a shout out before we get into this. I want to give a shout out to Indigo, IndigoPapers.com. Still go dabble on that website. They have grown, and they have gotten bigger, and they have outgrown their space, and so they were not going to renew their lease in January. And this kind of came to us, actually came to Lloyd and Noah at Tingle & Co., and they threw our name in there, and they said, hey, would y'all want this? They want to make a podcast studio. So we supplied the equipment, they supply the room, and we're bringing out content out of Southern Regional Medical Center. It's worked out great.
That's awesome. It looks nice. Clean background, too.
And we're working on it. We're working on it. There's some, you can't see the other stuff, but look, in about 2 weeks, it's going to be mint, Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it.
Maybe this change of scenery can help out Lloyd to answer his phone.
Coach, let me just go ahead and tell you right now, I'm still waiting on a text from this afternoon, and it's got no answer. So I don't think it's.
Hey, can I tell you this?
That's okay.
I just got a new phone, so I know it ain't my shit.
Hey, you got the new phone. You made fun of me for getting the new phone. You go ahead and you get the new phone.
I did see Jared. So I wasn't able to get it on the day it dropped. So apparently, you did some extra shit. I had to wait. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. What'd you say, Bryce? I'm sorry.
No, you're good. I said I can see Jared in the background here on my screen, and I saw he was checking his phone, and I was like, oh, that's the new one.
He got the new one. See, I got the new case and everything for mine. I'm very excited about it. Listen,
you can't hide money. It's okay.
Steve, that's what you think, but what you need to understand is that Daddy lives in the upgrade world. Okay, we don't get new phones around here until we're upgrade eligible. Okay, that's what we're living in.
This is the first one of my life. I'm excited about it. But Bryce, I would not hold your breath on Lloyd.
I just paid mine off.
I tried to.
You
call
don't use
Lloyd
it, so you should probably just send it back.
I tried to call Lloyd today, and his phone was not ringing, and I was like, "Oh boy, his phone's dead. He's not going to show up to the show." But he was here. He made it, and he got some technical issues figured out. So we're excited because if not, we're going to have to talk to you over the phone, which is fine. I just like seeing your pretty face, Bryce, and the conversation goes a lot smoother this way. So let's jump right into it. Obviously. The big conversation of the last couple weeks is what's wrong with LSU, what's wrong with their offense, what's wrong with Nuss, why is Brian Kelly lying to everybody? There's something that doesn't kind of match up. They had this bye week. They say he's good and healthy. He wasn't going to get a ton of first-team reps because he's going to have a rest day, but he was healthy 2 weeks ago. What is the conversations, and what are you hearing from behind the scenes over these last couple weeks leading into the South Carolina game this weekend?
Yeah, we'll start obviously with what publicly was kind of said today, that the expectation is that Nussmeier should be good to go. When asked about an injury report, Kelly, I guess, listed him on there, which is this whole weird, we didn't get to talk last week, but just this whole weird conundrum, however you want to say, that they've kind of utilized with this. I don't think anyone was asking about him in particular, but he decided to put him on the injury report and say he is a go. Look, he threw the towel. For people who don't know what that is, it's literally just to kind of, I guess, keep the arm warm,
it's a big pitching exercise.
Without the stress. Yeah, big pitching exercise. So for baseball fans, you know what that is. But just in terms of where he's at, I was talking with someone who is in the medical space, works in orthopedics, works with athletes, and works with pitchers who've had issues with this, even any type of oblique injury.
What is this? Is it oblique? Is it abdomen? Is it core? What is it?
That's what we're led to think, that this is an oblique injury, that this is something that any type of trunk rotation is going to just be not just painful, but it's going to be minimized to how effective you can be with it. So if that is indeed true, which I'm led to believe, he rested last week in terms of putting stress on that throwing the football. Whether you want to call it there's tears in the oblique, to what extent is this grade 1, grade 2, whatever it is, I do agree with the sentiment that Brian Kelly's saying that this is not something that wasn't going to get better until you got to the bye week to where he could literally not do anything. I agree with that. I disagree with the decision to play him against Southeastern if that was the case. That did not make sense. So where are we now heading into South Carolina? You had Michael Van Buren get all the first-team reps. Brian Kelly said today, and I think some people took it as maybe foreshadowing that he has the ability to step in and make plays if you need him to. But this is Nussmeier's job. This is going to be Nussmeier's job when they take the field on Saturday night, barring anything extra that happens, any type of re-aggravation. My concern is how effective can you truly be after, what is it going to be, 14 days after not putting stress on that and being able to throw the football? That's something that unless you were sitting there in practice this week and watching, you're not going to know. But all things, talking with some people that we've been able to take away, is that there was little to no in terms of throwing last week. It was just mimicking a lot of mental reps, however you want to take it. And that's where you sit with this. You sit with essentially a quarterback that you hope that week off did enough for him to be more effective and more decisive. I do lean, guys, and we can talk about this, it's not just a physical thing right now with Gary Nussmeier. That's where I lean with this. So there are some physical limitations. I think that has crept over into the mental side of the game for him.
Do you see if this weekend, if Nuss doesn't re-aggravate it but just doesn't look effective in the first half of the game, do you see a change in the second half?
Let's play the hypothetical that it's a 10-7 game you're losing, 13-10 game you're losing. I mean, at what point, if you're Brian Kelly, Joe Sloan, and this offensive staff, are you willing to continue to risk this? I think that's the big question. 2 weeks ago against Ole Miss, it wasn't a must-win game, but you could have won that game with a little bit of spark offensively. So you're always going to wonder, what if we would have put him in? I don't think you can go into another game and get into a situation like you're talking about knowing that you have a capable backup on the bench. I'm not saying Michael Van Buren's an All-American, not saying he's All-SEC, but he played 8 SEC games last year. He knows how to move the football. He adds a dimension with his legs. At some point, you have to ask the question, did you bring him here just to hang out, or is he truly pushing Nuss to be better? What was the role of that? NIL, investment aside, all of those things, Brian Kelly has to decide, are you trying to win this season, or are you trying to just manage essentially egos and figure out what you want to do going forward? To your point, if it was me, yeah, Michael Van Buren's getting the call in the third quarter if you don't do anything in that first half and you're trailing or it's a close game. I just don't understand how you can continue to put the same product out there with the amount of data points we have.
Yeah. Jared, you got one?
Yeah, so, I mean, Bryce, I think you look back a year ago and, well, first off, I'll sit here and I'll talk about this year. I personally circled this South Carolina week as a huge week for them. I know it doesn't look the exact same as we possibly thought it would in the standings coming into this week, but it's still a very talented football team. If you remember back last year, this South Carolina team took a loss at home against Ole Miss 27-3, and then they went on the road this next week. And that's when they finally played an Alabama team at the time who I think was ranked top 10 probably still, and lost by 3 points. And I think that's when they figured out those 2 losses in a row, okay, this is different because they went on that run after that. So this week kind of equals that Ole Miss week where they figured things out. And I think if that team's looking at how things went last year, it was, did we learn from our mistakes because we're pretty much sitting on that same spot? Can we get better a week early? From the LSU side of things, are they looking at this as does it have the feel that team is understanding the urgency in this ball game? Albeit you got a South Carolina team coming in that doesn't have the ranking that probably matches the kind of talent that's actually on that roster.
I think that there is a sense of urgency from LSU's perspective to know your back's against the wall, your margin of error has gotten a little bit more thin to that point. Now, on South Carolina's side, understanding what team's walking into your building, you have a team that can't afford anything else. Like, if they want to try to make a playoff run, I don't know if you guys have seen, but what they've got coming up is a little bit ridiculous. Oklahoma, Alabama after this. I mean, it's a gauntlet. A&M's, they're going to make a trip to College Station. So they've got big games down the road, but for South Carolina, to your point, it has to start this weekend. Like, it has to start this weekend. If they could go on the road and steal one in Death Valley, that would be, you're talking about like a season-defining, season-changing type of game, which, to your point, they had some of that over the past, not just last year, but I guess, 2 years ago when they had that crazy run in October with Tennessee and Clemson. So Beamer has done this before.
Right.
My concern on LSU's side of things is understanding, like I said, yes, this isn't maybe as high profile as you thought it was. This is still a team with a quarterback who I think is among the most talented in the country. He hasn't maybe delivered on that. He's quietly been playing better, after the first couple of games of the season. And you also have a guy in Dylan Stewart. Yes, defensively, they're not as deep as they were last year. Just a little stat for you. South Carolina had the most players, last time I checked, that were undrafted free agents. So it tells you they may not have had talent in terms of off that roster last year that was going to get drafted, but they had a lot of really good players on that defense. And obviously some of the guys that got drafted, Kyle Kennard, Nick Emanwari there as well. Dylan Stewart is nasty off the edge. I mean, he's just a really good football player. So they have some upper echelon talent. They don't have the depth they had last year. We've seen that through the first month of the season. But if you're LSU, you got to understand what you have in front of you. This is it's a get-right game, not like Southeastern was. This is a get-right opportunity against a real opponent and a team that's probably better, like you said, than that record indicates, probably better than the lack of a number next to their name there on the scoreboard too. So I think it's an interesting game. I think there's a lot of storylines heading into it. South Carolina needs to turn things around. This is a statement opportunity still early in the season here in the first week of October for both teams, first game of October for both teams, where they need to make a stand or the season could maybe get out of hand.
And the reason I bring that up, just so people who don't know exactly where this thing is for them right now, look, we could sit here and say the urgency should be there to start the year. Of course it should be. People look at different things and people go about things differently. When your back gets put against the wall, it puts you in a different spot. That South Carolina team is coming off of a bye as well, right? They've got 2 losses already. And like you said, Bryce, they're going to play. They're going to come to Death Valley this week to face a number 11 ranked LSU team. Then they're going to play a number 6 ranked Oklahoma team, 8 ranked Alabama team, 4 ranked Ole Miss team, and 5 ranked Texas A&M team. So that, like you said, it is now or never for them, really, truthfully. I think they understand that. And I think that talent matched with that mindset, you coming into it, don't look at this as a 2-loss team coming in to start October. I don't really think that that's what the situation is. You have to really play it with a completely different sense of urgency, knowing where they are and how their mindset is, and knowing also where you are in your journey to get where you want to go at the end of the year.
And I'll add to that, you have a quarterback, and this happened across the country. Kelly was kind of asked this about, we love making these big, proclamations about so what's happening in college football. This team's bad, that team's bad, this quarterback was overrated. And he suggests, and I do agree with him to an extent, let things develop a little bit. Understand You're still only 4 or 5 games respectively into your seasons, maybe 6 for some teams. That being said, you have a guy at the quarterback position that I don't need to remind any LSU fans made you look bad for a half last year at home. He is capable of doing that. And I said this, at the beginning of the year. I didn't think South Carolina was as talented as they were last year, but what scared me about them is they had a guy under center that has the opportunity and has the ability to put a team on his shoulders. And if LSU had any, shortcomings heading into that game, that would scare me. So now knowing what we know about both teams, like you said, sense of urgency for South Carolina coming in, Shane Beamer being able to go on the road and get a big win, LSU's offense scuffling. This is not one you can just roll the ball out against because they've got 2 losses and go win the football game. I mean, South Carolina scares me in a lot of different ways, and it all starts with number 16.
Lloyd, you got one?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you, because of, I guess, where LSU was health-wise going into the bye week, and obviously they had a litany of things they needed to correct on the offensive end, whether it be play calling, quarterback play, running backs getting healthy. Like, how much could you have actually done to change what you do schematically versus just getting people healthy? Like, it feels like that they had such a big need to just kind of rest everybody, and then it's like, well, during a bye week, we'd like to be able to self-scout, kind of look at yourself and where are we deficient, where can we get better? And instead it was like, all those guys that need to get better can't play.
Well, it starts with, and I'll tease this, it starts with who's leading offensive meetings. Who's holding the play sheet?
When does that? Yeah, if there's time to make a change, it could be where Brian Kelly
that would be the change, right? Because, like, to your point, you got to get Caden Durham healthy. You can't sit out there and run him into the ground in practice during a bye week because he has to get healthy. I would say, from a personnel standpoint, the couple of changes, and I know you asked about scheme, personnel-wise, you could learn more about Harlem Berry, right, after the performance that he had. You could learn more about Carius Kern, and I wrote about it today, and Kelly talked about it today. They, with the injury to Paul Mavinga and him being questionable right now to go Saturday, they could slot him inside. I love that. I don't think it fixes everything. I think it helps some things, though, too, inside. So you can figure personnel things out. Schematically, you are who you are. You don't just implement a whole new scheme during the middle of the season. Now, what you can do, you can walk into that position room, you can walk into that offensive meeting room and say, hey, we're changing some things. We've got new command. We've got new leadership. And, I'm not saying neither here nor there that that's officially happened. I just think that you will see some things differently on Saturday night in how this offense is called. Whether that results in a win resoundingly or a loss, I can't tell you. That results had to be played on the field. But I do think over the bye week, some come-to-Jesus meetings, some opportunities to self-scout were taken seriously, and there had to be some type of overhaul because, to Jared's earlier point, there's a lot riding on this game for South Carolina. It's kind of, in my opinion, it's do or die for LSU. In October, you've got to know who you are offensively and have an identity, and so I think this bye week, it better be spent really, really getting into the nitty-gritty and knowing who you are.
Bryce, let me ask you a question, because a lot of people are putting a lot of onus on the offensive play calling and the offensive struggles on the offensive coordinator, rightfully so, right? Everybody's coming at Joe Sloan and because of his play calling and not being able to run the football. They brought in a guy from Florida State, Alex Atkins, who is the run game coordinator, right? That was his title. Is there a conversation right now? Does the running game fall directly on Joe Sloan, or is Alex Atkins have any influence on the actual run game play calling?
I see, the great stuff about this show is that we can all see what happens behind the scenes, but
except for Mikey.
but not all the viewers do until Lloyd just put us all three up here. No, I will say this. No, to your point, no. He does not, as much as the title might indicate. I will say that. A lot of times coaches get title bumps to be able to get salary bumps. That's kind of what happens. I will say with this, for people who keep calling for Alex Atkins was the scapegoat in Tallahassee for what happened last year. He was not the problem. He was not also the official play caller for what they were trying to do last year. So when people try to push back against, well, Atkins, see what he did last year, that I'm not even listening to that or entertaining that because it was such an anomaly and he wasn't the real issue. That being said, where does the lack of run game, where does this fall on? This falls on, in my opinion, Brad Davis and this offensive line, because I don't think you have a bad running back room. I hesitate to how to say this. Even with all the outside adversity, with trouble with the law that you've had in that running back room and different things that you've had, you still have the talent inside there to be able to make some guys miss. You have Caden Durham. I love Harlem Berry. Juwan Johnson is more than serviceable to be an option for you back there. And Caleb Jackson should be utilized better. That's a mind-numbing concept that no one can seem to figure out how to line them up and just let them run downhill. That being said, the lack of development up front from your offensive line, to me, has hurt the run game more than anything else, because there's when you repeatedly can't block or can't stay in front of your guys, can't create holes, regardless if the running back should know this, do this or not, bad habits start to get created. And it was, I guess, 2-3 weeks ago, where I think it was Jordan Rogers talked about this in the booth, that Caden Durham struggled with some things in terms of he kind of bailed out on those stretch zone runs to each side. That is creating a bad habit in the mind because, truthfully, he doesn't have to say this. Nobody has to say this. You can be a football fan to watch. He doesn't trust what he sees in front of him.
Correct.
So he's trying to make the most of it. So when you repeatedly have to do things like that, it does change your mentality as a player. So to your point, long-winded answer, Alex Atkins can have a say in this, right? Brad Davis can have a say in this. Heck, you guys could have a say in this. Until the offensive line has better players or these guys actually develop, there's nothing that's just going to magically pop. Like that to me is, and what I mentioned earlier, sliding Carius Kern inside, I love that idea because I think you've been pretty bad at the guard spot. We could make an argument you've been bad everywhere on the offensive line. I held some reservation for Braylon Moore because I think that ankle injury was more serious and he's been playing banged up ever since that happened. But if you line up Moore and Kern next to each other, one of the easiest things for a young offensive lineman to do is put his hand in the dirt and run somebody over. And at the very least, Carius Kern can do that. He has the strength and the athleticism to be able to do that. If that could be something that maybe sparks this run game, they don't need to talk about it. They need to do it. So to me, it lies more on the offensive line than anybody else or any coach. I think Brad Davis is going to be a person that probably needs to be under the microscope a little bit more, in my opinion, of what we're seeing up front with this group.
So you mentioned that. I got a question. I think, and I think it fits here in the situation that we're sitting here talking about the running game. Regardless of health or not, are you expecting to see an uptick in work from, I guess, maybe a Juwan Johnson and or Harlem Berry kind of combination? Or are you expecting to see Caden Durham kind of back to what he's done, taking his normal snap count, playing the way he's played in the past and how we've seen him? Or like, where are you expecting that kind of work or that split to kind of happen, if you will, in your intuition after having a week off, right?
Yeah, I mean, I expect to see Caden Durham's shoulder play the percentage game 65 to 70% of the load. Like, and maybe you even bump it up to 75%. I think that they view him, although it's not necessarily.
So if he gets to 75%, how you think he's pretty close to 100% health at that point?
I don't think he is. I don't think he's 100% healthy. I mean, look, ankles are a finicky thing. It takes one cut, one tweak, one plant out there on the field for him to say, yeah, I don't trust it. And then you've got the mental side of it too. So I would say let's just sit between 65 and 70%. How do you break that down after that? I have, beat the drum that Harlem Berry needs to get touches. Like, I understand he may not be polished as a blocker, understanding what he needs to do. The kid is electric. And right now, you need somebody that can make somebody miss. And so if Caden Durham's not 100%, just compare the athlete, and it's no disrespect. Harlem Berry offers way more upside than Juwan Johnson. It's not to say Juwan Johnson's a bad player. That's just how highly touted every single recruiting service, and a lot of people felt like inside that building that Harlem Berry was as a player and as a recruit. So I think that you're going to see a consistent dose of Caden Durham. I think you're going to see a consistent dose of Juwan Johnson with Harlem Berry sprinkled in. I hope, which are two different things, that you see a healthy dose of Caden Durham and you see a healthy dose of Harlem Berry. I want to see more Harlem Berry than Juwan Johnson on Saturday. That's just my personal opinion. Like I said, nothing against the kids. I just think you get a little more upside out of number 22.
Let me ask you this question, because I really don't know the answer to that. I want to know, like, when you sit here, you say Harlem Berry and Juwan Johnson. You got one kid who is literally the all-time leading leader in touchdowns scored in Louisiana high school, and they thought so much of him as an athlete that, hey, I know you've played quarterback your whole life. Let's put you in the defensive backfield and let's play you. So you're telling me that Harlem Berry is that much more electric than a kid that has that kind of background? That's what I want to know.
No. I don't think that he's that much more. I just think he offers more upside out of the backfield. I think he's a little bit quicker. I think that his cuts are smoother. Juwan Johnson's not a bad football player. I just don't think he needs to be, and we saw last year, I don't think he needs to be, or last week, 2 weeks ago, he needs to be running back one for an SEC team. Like, I don't feel that. Now, everything to what you said, 110% true. The kid was dynamic in high school.
Yeah.
Don't want to take, like, not even dynamics, not even doing him justice, what he did in high school. Like, it was ridiculous what he did. Some of the best high school tape in the last 3 to 5 years we've seen. Harlem Berry is that good. In terms of that. So I just want to see more of Harlem Berry than I do Juwan Johnson. It doesn't mean I want to never see Juwan Johnson take the field again. And it also depends on the health of Caden Durham to an extent. If he's not healthy, then let's go with a more split medium. Because we did see Harlem Berry late in that game against Ole Miss get more touches. Was that indicative of what's to come? We'll see. But I don't know. I think if it's 3rd and 7, Jared, 3rd and 6, I want to see Harlem Berry out of the backfield on a passing route more than I want to see Juwan Johnson. That might just be personal preference.
I always said it as this, and obviously, like, I just the way I think about it is I do think because he spent so much time in the backfield, and if you're going to give him an opportunity to touch the ball, it's easier for him to figure out how to make cuts and read blocks, because that's something that he's done for a long time. I'm in the camp of right now where he's at today. I think it's really tough to give him 15-plus true running back touches inside the tackle with the majority of those, because that's just a different pounding. I don't think he's used to taking that, and I think that's hard to learn how to do in the middle of an SEC season. So obviously,
you're talking about Harlem or Juwan?
No, Juwan. Obviously, okay. Harlem freshman, so he hasn't played at this level, but he has played in between the tackles, and he's done that for a while. I think those two games are different, and I think that has a lot to do with how they've gone about when Caden was out this past week, and how it wasn't just a ton of running back runs and using it that way. That's just how I think it goes. Because it also goes to, once again, if he goes down, what are you sitting there with? You got 2 backs left, right?
and Xavier Thomas, and that's it.
Exactly. So I think that had a lot to do with it, and that's why I want to know in terms of like the health of Caden Durham, where is that, and where do we think that is, and how much is that going to play into how the running back room gets utilized this week?
Well, and I'll say this too, you've got to be creative. So to your point, you are correct. Put Juwan Johnson in situations that are advantageous to him. Lining him up 7 yards behind the quarterback isn't advantageous to him. Like that to me is something he can do. Get him out in space. You know, I go back to the Clemson game where when they utilized him, they were willing to put him in a 3 wide receiver set and throw screen passes to him. Like they were willing to do some different things. Get creative with him. I would treat him, yes, he can run in between the tackles if needed. I would treat him and Xavier Thomas the same if I'm talking about running back, and I guess I use that term loosely.
Bryce, I want to stay on the offensive side of the football, right? Brian Kelly mentioned today in his presser that they're going to focus a little bit more on the receiver rotation. What does he mean by that? There's some guys that are going to get less opportunity. I mean, obviously, like they're not going to rotate them in as frequently, but does that mean that he's going to pick with 3 or 4 guys and they're going to get the bulk share of the plays?
So go back to the Clemson game, and oftentimes it looked like line changes with what they would do at wide receiver. And look, you've got some guys like I think it was asked today about Kyle Parker. Kyle Parker's a really good player. He's just the backup to Aaron Anderson. Aaron Anderson's not going to come off the field a lot. Kyle Parker's done a really good job. You've also had guys that have blocked really well in run situations. Parker being one of those. Barian Brown is graded out as a good run blocker. That's not something that necessarily is bad on the other guys like Aaron Anderson and some of these other players. That's just what they've been really good at. You've got to settle into who can you count on in situations. And I'd like to see Nick Anderson be a bigger part of that. Chris Hilton, to me, still has not found that in terms of what you want out of there. So you have to have some guys that situationally, this is the group we're putting out on the field. 3rd medium, 3rd long. If we're going 3 receivers, we're going 4 receivers. Here's the 3 or 4. And obviously you're going to put Trey Dez or Bauer Sharp as one of those guys because they're so athletic and dynamic in what they can do. But to that point, you've got to settle in because one thing that was frustrating, and I go back and I think it was Nick Anderson caught a pass, or maybe Aaron Anderson did. One of the two caught a pass against Ole Miss as they were driving, taken out of the game, 4 or 5 plays off. Like receivers need to be in rhythm, and when it's a lot of times I say, and this is a comparison a lot of people make. When a shooter finally hits that first 3, when a guy's waiting on to get the ball and he feels like he's getting open, and he gets the first one. Let's say it's a 12-yard gain. Then that's like, okay, he's feeling it. He feels comfortable. Now he's in the zone ready to go. LSU has been I've had a quick trigger with some of these receivers, in my opinion. So you've got to let some guys establish because, look, that's what you brought them in to do. I think this is still a really dynamic receiving room with a lot of guys that can do a lot of different things. But you've got to be able to keep these guys in situationally and guys know what their role is. And I go back to Nick Anderson. He's the biggest example because for a guy to be that big and not be utilized like on a hitch route on 3rd and 6, it's mind-blowing to me. And I will say this, if people want to complain about play calling and the utilization of receivers, go look at what C.J. Daniels is doing down in Coral Gables with Miami. They're using him the way he needed to be used. LSU fans thought he sucked last year, but it was because he was hurt and they didn't know how to use him. So to me, it's just one of those things where you give a big sample size, you find guys what their role is, and not that they can't play outside of those roles, but they just have to be able to be counted on in certain situations, and they've got to know what their role is.
Yeah. Well, hopefully they've kind of shored up those roles over the course of these last couple weeks. I know you have another show on the horizon, so we don't want to keep you too much longer. We appreciate your time, as always, on these beautiful Mondays. Hopefully we're talking again next week after a win, and the offense looks great, and everybody thinks we're going to the playoffs.
And Lloyd answers a text.
And Lloyd answers. Are you going to be out there? Are you going to be out there tailgating this weekend?
We are. I don't mean to cross-promote here, but on 3 Bengal Tiger, we're going to be having a tailgate and a live show.
There you go.
In lot 404, I believe. I got to nail down the details. We'll be posting that tomorrow. So we're going to be hanging out.
What y'all got to eat over there?
We're partnering with some folks. They got some jambalaya they're going to be making, hanging out.
Shit, we coming through.
Yeah, come on. Hop on the show.
Jay, you're going to be here this weekend?
Football.
Oh, breaking news.
Jared just announces right here on Monday subtly that he's going to show up this weekend without telling anybody.
There we go.
Cut that. You
Let's
caught
have a
it.
time.
Yeah, I love
so
that.
we'll release the details. I'll shoot it over to you guys, and we're gonna have a fun time. Should be a fun game too. I mean, all things considered, these are two teams that desperately, like Jared said, and I thought it was the best thing we've said so far. They need a kick. They need a boost, and so we'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens. Look, don't text Lloyd. Text me and Jared. We'll figure it out. We'll send Lloyd the invite.
I'm not even throwing Lloyd in the group chat, so it's fine.
Yeah, make them do some content. Put these two to work. Get them on the show.
Yeah, no doubt. Hey,
Appreciate you, fellas.
Bryce, appreciate you, dude. See you next week.
Thanks. Appreciate it.